I have beef with anime. Ever since I started reading light novels, I've had beef with anime. Let me explain. You ever think about the fact that anime wasn't anime at first? Well, I know, some were only anime and will only ever be anime. In fact, the first thing people are gonna say about series like Cowboy Bebop or Evangelion is that they are original anime, but plenty of series out there originally existed as manga and sometimes as light novels. In other words, the majority of anime are adaptations, but we never really think of them that way. Sure, the majority of us know that a lot of anime probably have a manga or light novel out there, but if we're watching an anime, we're thinking in anime. We're thinking of the animation, the voice acting, the pacing, the backgrounds, a visual language we learn naturally as we integrate into the medium. We're not thinking about the language of adaptation because there is a difference, and that difference can be crucial. Let's do a hypothetical. Let's assume you put on the Overlord anime. The premise seems cool, the character designs seem interesting, but once you start watching, you realize it doesn't look very good. For a fantasy anime, the world is very bland, the character designs are cool, but they don't animate very well. The premise seemed interesting, but it's hard to tell exactly what's supposed to make the protagonist interesting. You drop it. Are you at fault? No, not at all. You just didn't think it was a good anime. That's totally fair. But you do still think the premise is interesting, and you do still think the character designs are very cool, especially Albedo. So nobody can blame you for picking up the first volume of the light novel when you happen to spot it at your local bookstore. The character designs are even cooler in the light novel when they're drawn by this artist. They have like this Western fantasy tinge to them, and wouldn't you know it, the writer seems very committed to painting this fantasy world in vivid detail. He also seems to be very particular about the way he describes what Ainz is thinking. You enjoyed it. It wasn't anything crazy, but you'll probably be picking up the next volume. How can these two experiences be so different? On paper, they're the same series, no? That's where the language of adaptation comes in. Because, and I'm sorry for all my Overlord anime onlys, the Overlord anime is a bad adaptation. Not a bad anime, a bad adaptation. It fails to properly contrast the clash between the Western fantasy and MMORPG fantasy the light novel goes out of its way to showcase. It cuts out a lot of Ainz's internal monologue that shows us how apathetic he's becoming volume by volume. It animates a lot of the super descriptive action scenes with dated CGI. It fails to adapt. In simple terms, and I mean simple like caveman simple terms, adaptations should take the thing that makes a series fun and amplify it times 100. Reincarnated as a Slime, for example, works because the protagonist is so likable. So when it got adapted, the director and crew made sure Rimuru had the perfect voice actor and that he was always animated endearingly whenever he was in slime form. Okay, so anime adaptations aren't perfect. Big news. We've been knowing this, right? But why do I have beef with it? Well, that's because light novels don't get adapted properly more often than not. Manga's easy. You look at the drawings, you make sure they move like in the drawings. You make sure they move extra well if it's a popular manga you're adapting like Chainsaw Man or Jujutsu Kaisen. It's condescending, I know. There's still plenty of other things that go into adapting manga into anime, don't get me wrong, but compare that to light novels. There's some illustrations, every now and then, but it's mostly just words. The studio has to take those words and imagine what it's gonna look like. Basically no different from being handed a script for an original anime. If the author never described certain settings, the studio has to come up with those settings. If the author never described the expressions on a character's face, the studio has to come up with those expressions. If the author never choreographed a particular fight scene, the studio has to choreograph that fight scene. Now, let's ponder for a bit. Do you think most adaptations get the Mushoku Tensei or Re:Zero treatment? Or do you think most get the Overlord treatment at best? Yeah, it's particularly frustrating because it is harder to check out a light novel, right? When there's a bad anime adaptation of a manga, all you have to do is open the manga and see and look at and say, oh man, the art is awesome, right? If the Blam anime, right? The Blam anime is animated in like 3D, doesn't capture all the magic of the manga. You go up in the manga, you immediately see what's special about it. Light novels aren't the same. You have to actually directly engage with the work before you get to see what you were missing out on. Hence my frustrations. So I'm gonna teach you how to read the language of adaptation. This isn't a video saying you should just always go to the source and avoid anime completely. That's not what I'm saying. It's just a breakdown on what components go into adapting stuff. So hopefully next time you run into an anime adaptation of a light novel, you're better able to discern whether or not there's something there worth checking the source material for. There's 4 main things to look out for when we're talking about adaptations, specifically book to show adaptations, or in our case, light novel to anime. The theme, the details, the narrator, and the pacing. The theme is simple. What was the point the author was trying to convey? In Saga of Tanya the Evil, the author is mostly trying to convey the war is pointless, it's boring, there's no winning, it's dumb. The anime fails at adapting this. The explosive actions and Tanya's iconic freakouts are plenty entertaining. The author actually opts to be as dry as he can when he writes the action sequences. We only ever get Tanya's freakouts from other characters' perspectives. When it's her narrating, it's usually just her exhaustingly describing how she's gonna approach the battle. Thus, the anime fails. We never feel beaten and bruised the way we do after we read a volume of this series. Peep that though. The anime itself isn't bad. It's a fun, edgy action anime, but it's not a good adaptation. It doesn't convey the theme of the light novel well enough. It's actually pretty rare for adaptations to fail at this though, mostly because the theme tends to be spelled out in big, bold letters. Yeah, the theme is usually fine, but there is another side to the coin that most anime adaptations do fail at sometimes, and that's the premise. While the theme is the point the author is making, the premise is the foundation that's supposed to make the light novel fun. Take Gun Girl Online. You'd be surprised to know the Gun Girl Online spin-off is pretty fun. The whole thing is basically, what if we imagine a world where we could play in a hyper-realistic BR Battle Royale competitive game? And what if we got to be cute anime girls while we do so? The whole thing, and I mean the whole thing, is just vividly described gunfights involving cute girls and really fun first-person shooter game modes you wish existed. The anime, of course, does not do a good job at showing this. It's animated, just kind of like middle of the road, and a lot of the monologue describing the choreography of the gunfights, the logic behind them, the positioning is cut out. It omits the good stuff. You would think the theme and premise would be the glue that holds a series together, right? The thing that makes one series stand out over another. Well, when we're talking about adapting something into anime, that's not necessarily the case. Remember, the Tanya anime is by no means bad. The action is good, and Yuki Aoi's performance as Tanya is generational. That's because the studio made sure to reinforce the things that make an anime, a visual medium, good. Like they say, the devil's in the details. The details mean the descriptions. See what I did? See the way I did that? That was a good transition. Yeah, the details. Sorry. The details mean the descriptions. What's our author putting emphasis on? What do they want us to imagine in our heads? What do they want us to very vividly think about? Let's look at Danmachi. The Danmachi light novel is one of the greatest action light novels of all time. I would personally put it above a good chunk of action manga as well. There's a volume in this series that is 400 pages long, and it's just 2 long-ass fight sequences. Literally, like the setup for the fight sequences is in the previous volume. So yeah, Danmachi puts a lot of effort into the details. It describes every fist thrown, every bone broken in the most potent language possible. It makes you feel the bumps and bruises, as well as the glory felt after a battle hard fought. Of course, you know where I'm going with this. The anime doesn't meet that standard. Danmachi's anime should, on paper, have animation on par with at least the hype moments in Hero Academia. Like literally just for the series to work, because Bell's growth is packaged into the fights. Him beating an enemy he had no hope of beating is supposed to make you feel like he's a gladiator taking all the glory, like he's growing from a timid, fragile boy into a full-blown hero. If the animation fails, Bell's growth fails. And well, the animation fails. The details are supposed to be what the studio focuses on, what the meat of this light novel is. What are the readers coming back for? The ReZero anime makes sure Return by Death feels visceral through the gruesome deaths and Subaru's exaggerated expressions and voice acting. Mushoku Tensei makes sure to give room for both the action, magic, and family drama to breathe. You're never sacrificing too much of one to make sure the other works. Konosuba's voice acting is always on point. All the voice actors always have the right amount of expression in their voice, whether it's them freaking out or playing the straight man. This doesn't mean they're adapting the light novel one for one, because that's not possible. What they are doing is replicating the feeling you get when you're reading the light novel. That's what the details should do. Many times, however, it's just not possible to adapt crazy intense fight scenes or replicate a certain type of atmosphere or include every bit of the light novel's narration. Man, I'm really good at this transition thing, actually. The narrator refers to our best friend. That is, the voice that's going to be guiding us by the hand through this story. Could be in third person or first person. Some light novels don't put too much emphasis on this aspect, but you'd be surprised at how important it is. I mean, if a protagonist is thinking, that girl is eating a burger, I don't like them with lettuce though, and it's not important to the story, that part might get left out in an anime adaptation, but in a light novel, it's a small dumb detail that makes us feel closer to the character. Let's look at bottom tier character Tomosaki. This whole series revolves around how socially inept our protagonist is. He's trying to be more sociable. He's trying to develop people skills. And the other chooses to show us this by trapping us in Tomosaki's mind. What follows is a whole lot of social anxiety, a whole lot of cringe situations, all coded in Tomosaki's own socially paranoid narration. The series works because the narrator is Tomosaki, the guy who has no social skills, the guy who's awkward, the guy who overthinks. If it were told in a third person, we'd be able to distance ourselves, pretend we don't know him, pretend and we don't see. Read with one eye closed. By being inside Tomosaki's head, we're forced to grit our teeth and deal with all the cringe just like he has to. And when Tomosaki grows, when he becomes more confident, we get rewarded along with him. We get to see the change in his own mindset, how much he starts valuing his own self. I don't think I need to say. I'm sure you already know. The enemy, of course, fails. Simply because there's not enough of this internal monologue. It's that simple. Is there some? Sure. Is it shown visually? Sure. It's just not enough. That small change is enough to sabotage the tone the author so carefully crafted. Monogatari is a good example of this. The light novel is known for having a non-stop stream of both dialogues and internal monologues. So when Studio Shaft adapted it, they came up with the screen cards, usually containing sentences or single words meant to add additional subtext to what our characters were thinking. It's not a one-to-one adaptation. It doesn't include every bit of dialogue and narration one for one, but it replicates the tone incredibly well. That's what matters. Narration does not have to be a direct adaptation as long as you're conveying the same feeling through visual or music cues. It's only a failure if you choose to omit it completely. Finally, we have pacing. And this is super simple, like a little more simple than I would like, but I mean, it's just the honest truth, right? If your 12 episode series is adapting more than 3 volumes, it might be cooked. That's all. That's all. I'm oversimplifying it, but that really is all it comes down to. Just if a studio is cramming more than 3 volumes into 12 episodes, that's like the standard. It usually means that they're trying to rush through a lot of the material. It's for sure going to butcher a lot of the things that make the series special. I'm sure there's some exceptions to the rule, but that is just the harsh reality, right? Doesn't mean that if the studio just adapts 3 novels, it's going to be good. No, not necessarily, but this is just the easiest way to tell when something just wasn't taken care of properly, right? If you're already at the 4th, it doesn't matter if it's an isekai, if it's something, a rom-com, like just something that's super light, some super dumb, it doesn't matter. If the series is kind of going over that 3 light novel mark, usually it means, yeah, they cut some fat, right? They cut some fat. So it's actually kind of the easiest way to tell when an adaptation might not be doing the source material justice. If you look up like how many volumes does this series adapt, and it says like 5. I think I came from, what was that series called? The Dungeon Boonies. Like I grew up in the Dungeon Boonies or something. I think that adapts like 5 light novels in 12 episodes, which is insane, right? So it's just the easiest way to tell, like, oh yeah, a lot of stuff's gonna get left out or things are gonna get rushed through, right? Like that's just the easiest telltale sign. Mushoku Tensei like adapts, I don't remember exactly how many volumes, maybe 5 or 6. I don't want to say for like a first season, right? But it is kind of like perfect. Like the first season is like 20 something episodes and it doesn't have that many volumes. And it works, right? Like the pacing feels proper. So it's just the easiest way to tell. That's it. That's it. I don't really have too many thoughts on adaptations themselves because it's kind of complicated, right? If you're somebody, for example, that doesn't read, this is like null and void for you because it doesn't matter. Like if the anime is bad, the anime is bad, right? It's kind of like, oh, the One Punch Man anime has horrible animation. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to go read the manga just because of that, right? It might mean that you're just going to choose to just not watch One Punch Man ever again. So there is that kind of angle to it where like if you just not integrated into that other medium, in this case light novels, you might just not, this doesn't matter, right? Like the anime is bad and that's it. But hopefully it was at least a little helpful for people that do kind of compare and contrast light novels and anime, right? Hopefully you'll be able to better tell when something isn't being done justice, right? Hopefully you can kind of see the signs. It's definitely an instinct you develop. I've definitely developed it over time where I kind of just like, we'll see something in an anime and be like, oh, that's interesting, but they kind of just brushed over that. I wonder if the light novel has a little more of that. Then you go back and yeah, surprise, it does, right? That's why I brought up Overlord, because that's how I felt about Overlord. Overlord, the anime isn't bad, but I was kind of like, I don't know, like it kind of feels like there's an it factor here that isn't here. Like I don't get it. Then I read the light novel and I was like, oh, this is supposed to be like a Western fantasy juxtaposition type of thing. Like, and it was a lot more interesting, right? And I'm caught up with it basically. I'm like 2 volumes behind, but I became a fan. So that's kind of what brought this inspiration on. So yeah, that's it, guys. Sorry for rambling at the end there. Typical of me, I guess. Again, I'll be in the comments if you guys have any questions, concerns, or if you just want to chat it up later.